Now been joined by Dikpo Fatogun. He is the Director Banking and Payment Systems Department at the Central Bank of Nigeria. Thank you, Dikpo, for coming on the show. And to my far left, we have Segun Akonji, Head of Investment Banking at Heritage Bank. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on the show. We're going to go back to the ATM withdrawal chart before we delve into the BVN, if you have enough time to look at that. I'm going to start off from Segun, because as someone who's in the system, before we go to the regulator, how does it come across to you, the fact that banks will now have to be charging 65 naira on the fourth withdrawal on another bank, not the issuer bank of the ATM?
Well, it's a topic that will be very challenging to address because of the emotion it's drawn. But if we talk about paying for service, I mean, it will be positive from that standpoint. And is this something that you find across the world? I think that is what you find in many countries of the world, except in very few countries. And fees are paid in different forms. Different forms. If you don't call it ATM fees, they are paid in different forms. So you really can't say that if people have to pay for service, it will be right to pay for service. How much to pay is a different thing. But if people have to pay for service to get it delivered, infrastructure-wise, in terms of the infrastructure that the people providing the service have to put in place, and in fact that you have to put in place multiplicity of infrastructure to support service delivery. You have to put generator, you have to put inverter sometimes, you have to put security. Just imagine the cost of running ATM. Beyond just placing the ATM there, maintaining it, imagine even the notes. Imagine, thank God for Ebola, now people have to wash their hands. Somebody is coming from an Okada ride, he's just changed his tires, he needs to take money, he comes with his sticky hand, punch the buttons, just get into the buttons, they get sticky and destroyed, you have to fix them. So the cost of maintaining, then you talk about the cost of switching, and then the cost of settlement. Banks have been bearing this. So essentially, you need to talk about this. People have to pay. Now, the second leg to that is, do we liberalize that market? Do we have to regulate it or liberalize it? It's another question. So that it becomes a function of efficiency and operational optimality for institutions to determine how much they should charge in that wise. So that's another question. So if you go to a country like Australia, for example, it's a liberalized market. Certain banks will not charge. Certain banks will charge. In US, for example, certain banks will refund you. You will pay. Then they refund you maybe on a monthly basis, whatever. When they check how much you've spent on withdrawals on ATM that you have been debited, they refund you. So it's a function of operational optimality, the issue of cooperation among banks, and trying to share the facility. We do not have too much of infrastructure sharing at the moment. Everybody is trying to do his own in his own way. Okay. So all of these are the challenges. So you need to pay, basically.
Okay. Let me come to Dikpo now. I was just speaking to Segun, not Dikpo. Let me come to Dikpo now. Okay. Segun was talking about liberalizing the market. Do you think we would have left this issue for the banks to decide whether they want to charge for ATMs withdrawal or not?
Okay, thank you very much. The decision was actually taken jointly with the banks. And you will know that the environment in which we are now, though it's a deregulated environment, and that is why the decision was jointly taken, the charge of 65 naira on the fourth withdrawal is actually a cost recovery. I don't know whether the banks will actually want to recover costs or they will want to top something on the cost recovery. You remember that...
So they're not making any profit?
On the 65 naira, no.
On that?
No.
Just
they
for
pay,
cost of operation?
Yes. They pay 55 naira to the acquirer, that's the owner of the ATM, and 10 naira to the switches. That is all. You remember that the circular we issued was actually clear on this too, because prior to December 2012, banks were charging 100 naira on all remote or NOS transaction. If you go to your ATM, you are not going to pay anything. But if you go to any ATM that belongs to any bank other than the issuing bank, you pay 100 naira. We stated in that circular so that Nigerians will understand where we are coming from and where we are going, that the 35 naira out of that 100 naira, 35 naira actually was for the issuing bank. That's the bank that issued you the card. But now that has been completely removed. The banks that issue the card does not make anything on the use of the card on a remote or not. In fact, what they do now is to even pay. You know, the first 3 withdrawals you do, there is 65 naira cost on each of them, and the banks will have to pay. So they are not making anything. It's cost recovery. Now, to go back to your question, if we've actually left it to the banks to decide on their own, maybe it would have been 100 naira, but we consulted with them, and it was very good negotiation. I mean, at the end of that negotiation, we agreed that it should be cost recovery alone, and that is what we have.
Now, I'm going to stick with Dikpo. There are allegations that banks make money from the issuance of cards because the ATM cards that are issued to the customers, they make money from it. Doesn't that cover every cost of operation, as the case may be?
It does not. It does not. Because when you are issued with a card, you know that banks don't produce these cards. They also acquire it. And we have companies that have the responsibility of producing the cards. You also have card schemes that are actually the owners of the cards. So when they issue you a card, it's at a cost to them. It's not free. And what they get back from you is just part of the, it's the cost recovery. You will remember that that has been reduced. It used to be more than 2,000, but it's now about 1,500, and for 3 years. So whatever cost comes with that is not enough at all to cover the cost of ATM withdrawals. We need to realize that if you go to your ATM, as I've said, you don't pay anything. But if you go to an ATM other than your bank's ATM, and you are free to do 3 withdrawals, just as Gabriel said, if you are a heavy user of cash, it means that you have not actually imbibed the cashless spirit. And if you are not a heavy user of cash, what will make you to go to an ATM 10 times, 20 times in a month, as we saw happened when the remote or not transaction charges were removed?